Real estate is great for long-term wealth. The one-on-one coaching is what gives me purpose every single day to get out of bed and help people move forward, whatever it is in their lives. Not only real estate investors, I got all kinds of other people. So that's my passion.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's inspirational and motivational. That's like a reason beyond just making money and security for your family and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it gives you a purpose.
You're listening to The Accredited Life, hosted by Peter Neal. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show.
Jens, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
Hey, thanks, Peter. I'm excited. It's early here in the mountain region, but hey, get up early and just get the day started.
Hey, it's a good way to start the day, and I love starting the day with the podcast off. It's a reason to get up in the morning, and a lot of times I have a really great conversation that just rejuvenates you for the rest of the day and gets the juices flowing. So, and I know this will be one of those convos. So, Jens, let's start with an introduction. Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? What's your story?
All right. How much time do you have? No, but well, first of all, as people can maybe detect from my name and my slight accent, I wasn't born in this country. I came to the United States actually 29 years ago this summer. So I've been here a long time. Started out on the East Coast. I was in Maryland, in Montgomery County for the first 10 years in telecommunication and IT. And then I migrated west. Me and my wife, we moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico 10 years ago. No, 19 years ago. It's not 9. We've been, I was like, wait, 19 years ago. I can't believe how long.
Wow.
Stayed in the IT field, got my degrees and all these things that you're supposed to do, right? To get ahead in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I got my undergrad, my master's degree, and it was great. I love my jobs. I really love the technology, and in the last 30 years, it's exploded. So I was able to ride that wave. But then in my mid 40s, I'm in my early 50s now. But in my mid 40s, I realized that I had another 20 plus years of IT ahead of me, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to continue to stay out in front of all the technology changes. And it's only, accelerated exponentially in the last few years with AI and everything. So I decided I wanted to change, and I looked around. Everything else just looked like another job until I discovered real estate investing roughly 10 years ago. It's like, wait a minute, here is a way to disconnect your time from your income, right? So started very slowly 10 years ago, buying some quads and stuff down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then, got into, some joint ventures, and then into the whole syndication, private equity space, and then into some warehousing and apartments. So we've done, I think, roughly 35 deals. It was We're up to 2,500 units at one point. Have sold quite a bit, but we still have, almost 2,000 units at a couple 100,000 square feet of industrial space, warehousing space, and so forth. So that was it. And then I also developed this passion for helping the next generation of investors to get into the space, and then translated. Then that moved into more of mindset coaching and business consulting. So that's kind of the two things I do now: is real estate investing and then coaching, mentoring, consulting as well.
Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't even know where to get started. One question I always like to ask people, what that kind of transition from one career path into another, was there anything that you were able to kind of bring with you from a skill set perspective, from some systems you were using or something like that, or just, the way that you showed up and structure your day back in those days compared to what you do now? Or maybe in the early days, that kind of thing. So what would be your answer to that?
Yeah, no, Peter, that's a great question, right? Because having 25 plus years of IT experience, absolutely, right? Numbers and data and project plans. That was also, I did this forever, right? So when I stepped into the real estate space, of course, I was drawn to the spreadsheets and the analysis.
Yeah.
And, the project plans and those things, right? And I think a lot of people, when they get into it, they're like, well, this is a completely new world. I need to learn all these new skills. Yeah, you need to learn some new stuff, but don't check your skills at the door. Use what you're really good at, right? So I relied on other people to be the front persons to go and have the broker connections and stuff, and I would be more on the back end managing the systems and all that stuff, right? So, so that's really that transition was probably easy on that side for me, if that makes sense.
No, I love that, and that's one of the reasons I ask. There's so many people that want to make that transition, and I always think it's important to, and I talk a lot about this on the show, is the foundation, and kind of taking that life assessment, knowing where you've come from, where you are today, and where you want to be, all that kind of stuff. Because when you sit down, you reflect on all your experiences. Like you said, there's probably a lot of crossover. There's probably a lot of things that are going to help you. And then you kind of know where you need to focus your time. So you kind of, your strengths, you understand your weaknesses. And to your point, you were able to understand that and then leverage other people to do the other things that maybe you didn't want to do, or you maybe didn't have the skill set to do, or whatever that was. So how did you initially jump in? Did you do the mastermind? Were you a weekend warrior guy, doing those kinds of events and things like that? Did you get a mentor and all, or did you just say, not everybody does that, right? Some people just jump right in and learn while they're doing, right? So what did you do, Jens?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, right? So so the first intro to it was Brandon Turner's book, How to Invest in Cash Flow Real Estate or something, rental property, I think it was called. Right? Yeah, it was the first intro.
It's sitting on the floor right there.
It's an old book now, but it's still very relevant. It's like, oh my God, here it is. And at that point, I wasn't really plugged into all the podcasts and all these things. I was like, who do I know in my network, right? We're talking 10 years ago. Who do I know in my network that does this? Like, oh, this guy, I was living in Colorado at that point. Oh, this guy Gage, right? He really knows. So I was like, hey, Gage, can I buy you some dinner? I really want to pick your brain on this stuff, right? Because I know you do it. So we sat down and had dinner, and basically he's like, all right, it's not that difficult. Just here, back of the napkin, you can figure it out. And he's like, don't invest here because it's a small town. The market is too small. Go to Albuquerque because that's a reasonable sized city, and go and call Chuck. Chuck was his broker. So he just basically told me where to go. He said who to call, and once I was like, okay, it took me a minute to have the courage, a couple of weeks to call up Mr. Chuck. I eventually did, and he was my first broker to buy the first fourplexes. This guy's 81 years old now. He's still super active. I just partnered with him on the latest deal we did. So I got into it just by leveraging people I knew and asking for recommendations and stuff. Then later on, when I knew I wanted to go bigger, I went into the whole, the joining some groups and that sort of stuff. But it was very simple initially. It didn't really take a lot of thinking and
love it. I love it.
And education.
This is a business where you can overthink it, and you can have that analysis paralysis, or paralysis by analysis, whatever you want to call it. It's very easy to have that in this business. I've seen it done many, many, many times. Oh, yeah. So I love that approach, where it's kind of the building blocks. To go back to something you said before, you one of the goals initially, and one of the things that attracted you to the business was disconnecting time from money. Was that always the case? I'm assuming if you're getting into fourplexes at all, that maybe you found out this wasn't necessarily the best way to do that, unless you structured it. Unless you had a property manager that was really good, and even then you still got to manage the property manager, right? So I'm curious if that was always your experience, or what your experience there was, and how that's maybe evolved over time to keep you on that that path to disconnecting time from money.
Yeah, and initially what was the why, right? What was the why behind this? And it was a little bit of this. I wanted to get out of IT, but it was more about getting my freedom back. I had a great job with good benefits and time off, but you get 3-4 weeks. It's about as much as you get in this country. Coming from Denmark, it's six weeks. So that was always a struggle. And having family back in Denmark, aging. Both my parents had passed away and stuff. I was like, wow, I don't want to be not wasting. I want to make sure that in the next 20 years, 30 years, when I still have the capability to do so, that I could experience the world, travel with my wife, see my family back home, right? And it would always be a choice of what I could do. So that was kind of the why initially
Mm.
behind it. So it's a long story, but so then I was like, okay, how do I do that? And it started with fourplexes, as you said. I've always had managers because I certainly do not want to be a manager. Well, for a little while, we managed a small mobile home park we own, but I always wanted to have people in there managing it for me, right? Because I don't want to be the person taking the phone calls when stuff is broken in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that, but then I also realized, right, I could have chosen the passive route. I could have spent the next 20 years working, invested all my money into it, but I didn't have the patience to wait that long. So I was like, if I get active, I get the benefit of structuring the deals and putting them together while inviting, my friends and family to invest alongside with me. And I had you know, the excitement around starting this actively, and going in that direction. So that was kind of why I chose that versus maybe just staying in passive in the business.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about the evolution of your investing over the years, because it sounds like it's evolved a lot. You mentioned mobile homes, you had the quads, you mentioned light industrial and things like that. So you've touched a lot of different asset classes. What have you learned? What do you like? What don't you like? Talk to me about the evolution of that over the years.
Oh yeah. So I sold the quads, right? So the smallest building we own, I think, is 11 units, and the biggest portfolio is close to 200 units.
Nice.
What have I learned? So on the negative side, don't buy old crap. And Peter, I mean, how crazy insurance has gotten and that cost of renovation, right? So when everybody was super excited about real estate investing in 2019, 2020, low interest rates and, money was readily available. I think we did some deals that were heavy value add without really thinking about the risk adjusted return here. If you go in and do something where you got to put a lot of money into it, you better make sure the upside is there, right?
Sure.
So those old buildings, just really expensive to run. And then the whole insurance, double insurance. So what I don't like are old properties that are really expensive to run. And especially in some municipalities where the city is just checking you out every 5 minutes around, rental violations and all this stuff, right? So there's certainly that I don't like. What I do like is like newer assets. We got some townhomes and other properties that are just less maintenance. The tenants pay their own utilities. Maybe they have sprinklers and all those things that seems much easier to manage the expenses. And then, as I mentioned, I liked that mobile home park, but it was small and we were kind of self-managing, so we ended up selling that. The move into then the industrial side, or light industrial, is like you don't have 100 tenants in one building. You maybe have one or two, right?
Yeah.
So once you have it leased out, they tend to be low maintenance, right? They take care of their own stuff. Of course, it takes more time to lease them and stuff. So I feel like and the cap rates are actually a lot higher because there don't seem to be too much competition. Not that many people want to get into the industrial space for whatever reason. So.
Yeah,
hope that answers the question.
No, definitely. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's something. It's gotten attractive and more popular the last couple years than ever before. But it's still foreign to so many investors, and I think too, spending time in that space, you have to like understand that world and who the tenants are and all. I would think for a lot of investors, it's hard for them to grasp. Like when you look at residential and they're looking at an apartment or single family homes or something, like they have a good idea who the end user is, who the residents are. Like they can picture it in their mind. Even like retail and all, like you drive around, you look at you shop in shopping centers and strip centers, and you go to Dunkin' Donuts and places like that, and also you have an idea. With industrial, I think a lot of people, it's just kind of hard to grasp. Like you said, how long is this place going to take to lease up? Who's the tenant going to be? All that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things that are attractive to it, especially as you kind of evolve in your investing and, like you said, want to get more passive and not necessarily be dealing with the tenants and the toilets and all that kind of stuff. And depending on like the light industrial side and the size of the building and all, it's an asset that we're not really making more of for various reasons with zoning and things like that. So, I mean, that's nice. Let's talk about the mindset part of the business and all, because you mentioned that a few times, and that's something that really resonates with me. I tell the story a lot on the podcast. Like, my introduction to real estate was, Rich Dad, Poor Dad in one hand, and Earl Nightingale's The Secret, The Stranger Secret in the other. So the money side, thinking differently from an asset side, and then the mental side of things. I mean, getting your head right, kind of came one at the same time. So it's always been a part of the business for me. What was that like for you? Was that something have you always been that way, or is that something you learned over time, or what's that look like?
No, I realized, I mean, maybe stepping back, and I've always been that way. I mean, self-development and stuff was not really a huge part of my life for many years, right? I was driven and I've been an athlete for years. So I knew the benefit of mental fortitude and positive thinking, but I didn't really pay a ton of attention to it. It wasn't until I started like really getting into listening to people. I was like, okay, I get it, right? As you said, there's the logical side of doing a deal, the underwriting and all these things. Yeah, we can all figure that out. But then do you have the courage to take the necessary action, right? To get into the right rooms, to put yourself out there, to have the right productivity. And I realized that you have to have both sides in order to be successful. So early on, when I started, kind of joining some of these groups and stuff, I was like, I was seeking out the personal development or the mindset piece of it, right? And because I just thought, okay, I'm in my mid 40s. This is probably a time to start really thinking about these things, right? Because for me to change my career this late in, quote unquote, late in life, that was difficult, right?
Sure.
And had I not had some help, I would have probably just said, well, yeah, this is nice, but let me just stay in the safe path of keeping my W-2 job, And I think the biggest shift for me was, 2020, when the world kind of shuts down, right? A lot of people just, receded in fear. And at that time, I hired my one-on-one like mindset coach, high performance coach, and he helped me actually leave my job in 2020, right?
Wow.
He helped me. I had, long story short, but I also had committed to my wife to move back to New Mexico. So we did that. We bought this house. We flipped the house in the middle. Actually, we renovated the house and moved into it. So all these things that where everybody's just watching Netflix, I took a ton of action. And had I not had that coach help me along the way, it wouldn't have happened, right? My life would have been completely different. I was like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing, the power of that. So I decided that I've always had a passion for teaching and helping people. So I decided it was time for me to step up and pay it forward. So I became, certified as a high performance coach. I started my own coaching there in, mid 2020, late 2020. And since then, I've coached like well over probably a couple hundred people.
Wow.
Yeah, I do, one-on-one in group sessions. I ran some conferences. I run some masterminds because I really feel like the collaboration, the mindset coaching is such a huge part of it. And I love it. Real estate is great for long-term wealth. The one-on-one coaching is what gives me purpose every single day to get out of bed and help people move forward, whatever it is in their lives. Right? Not only real estate investors, I got all kinds of other people. So that's my passion.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's inspirational. I feel like I say this all the time. It's inspirational and motivational. Because like you said, it's a reason. That's like a reason beyond just making money and security for your family and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it gives you a purpose, and I'm sure it's very satisfying, very fulfilling to make a difference in somebody's life in that way. So give me a little bit of an idea, maybe the framework that you work under, or when somebody comes to you, what does that look like? What does the process look like? How do you have them thinking, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so most people come to me, most people have this, I have a goal of, I want to make $1 million, I want to buy real estate or whatever. And they never really, not never, but quite often don't really think about the reason behind it and why this is important enough to them. Like, why? Well, because I want to quit my job. And it's like, okay, why is that important? Well, because I want to be able to go to my kids' baseball games and stuff. We got to dig into the deep reason behind it, because as stuff gets tough and difficult, people without a strong why are just going to quit, right?
Sure.
Like, fuck it, excuse me. Let's just go back to our W-2 job, and then
Yeah.
and so forth, right? Now, if we can connect with a deep why, like mine was, connecting with family and making sure I had the freedom to travel, and I'm leaving for Europe in 2 days to go back for 2 weeks, right? That's if we get that strong why, or the vision, as we call it, the clarity established, then people can start taking action. So we focus on a five kind of there's a kind of five pillars we work on. One is the clarity, right? Do you know what you want, right? Not I want 1,000 units. Like, no, what is it you want? Not the
What are they going to bring to you? Yeah.
right. Then we work on, do you have the right energy, right? Because do you have the right mental and physical energy to take the necessary? You take care of yourself, because it's easy to burn out, right? We want to go from high achievers to high performers.
Wow.
There's a slight difference
like
there. So you go, so you work on your energy, then we work on courage, especially if I was a bit of an introverted guy sitting behind a computer. Did I have the courage to go out there and connect with people and brokers and investors and stuff? So you got to have the courage to step out and take the necessary action. Do you have the right productivity? Some people suck at productivity and others are really good at it. You got to develop the right productivity. And then finally, do you have the right influence, right? Can you influence people to get on board with the dream you have? So clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. That's the five pillars we focus on to really go from that high achiever to the high performer in your life, right? That can be business, it can be personal, it kind of goes the gamut, because you can't be a successful business person if your home life is a mess, and vice versa.
Sure. It's all connected, right, at the end of the day. And I think there's a lot of people that do stuff like that in business, but they don't do it in their own personal lives, and I'm always curious to why that is. I mean? And sometimes I guess if you're working a corporate job or you're an entrepreneur, like you're just thinking in that business mindset, and that's where that came from, the goals and the vision and the BHAGs and KPIs and things like that. But not everybody does that in their personal life, and you just think, if you can dial that in, the potential just could be unlimited, right?
No, absolutely, right. And I was on a call with a longtime client last night, and we were talking about just some stuff about property management and he wanted to start a new some classes and stuff. That's great. But we haven't really, I supported him with that, but I said, we haven't really talked about your family for a while. How's it going with, I know his wife and his kids, how's it going with this, that, and the other? And we got really deep into some stuff. Oh man, have this and this, I struggle with that. Okay, what are some ways you can address and solve this? So he walked away with some very specific things to work on with his wife and stuff. And I felt like that was probably more valuable than talking about how to change this management company.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny, how things are interconnected, and sometimes you don't even realize it. And it's freeing up something over here, or freeing energy up, or just your mindset around something in one part of your life can so drastically improve other parts, just because it's not as much of a drag, or you're not as distracted by it or something like that. So I think that's a very powerful message there. How did you meet all those people? That is unbelievable. I mean, you've had some incredible success, and it sounds like you've touched a lot of lives. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I mean, I don't really advertise. I'm not on very much on the social media. It's all through personal connections and referrals,
Nice.
right? So basically, just over time, I've been running a couple of meetups. I've been running some small conferences. I get on podcasts. I, just go out in the community and just share what I'm doing, right? And people do connect. And even, I even maybe if I see somebody, it's like, it seems like you're struggling here. Could use some help in this area. Let me suggest some ideas and stuff, right? So it's very organic, but I love it that way because I don't want to spend all this time of creating this big marketing machine
Mm,
because I have to be very selective. I can't, take everybody that comes my way. So
sure.
I just kind of like, now I can take 2 weeks off. I just told my clients I'll be gone, and it's like, okay, we'll see you later in April and stuff like that. So it's very dynamic. It's very organic, and it's worked out for me. It's intentional. I
Yeah.
have to intentionally connect with people, but it's not like a big marketing machine that I run.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because you're the guy, right? It's not like you're gonna, outsource that to somebody else
It's
or
not scalable,
um,
that's for sure.
people do, right? They train other people in that, like the framework and stuff like that, right? And all, but to your point, it comes back to the why, right? Is there any tips you can give us on? You mentioned all those, different parts, the pillars there, but for somebody who's saying, yeah, how do you figure that out? You know what I mean? Or how do you dial that down? Because I feel like that's probably a lot of people. It sounds so simple, right? But it's usually the most simple things that are very complex to actually get to.
Yeah, we have to sit down and spend time on it, right? It
Mhm.
becomes, people get very uncomfortable very quickly because it's not super simple to start creating your vision. Like, my
Yeah.
vision, my what? So there are processes we go through, and I went, it's about a month ago, I went to a real estate meetup, and there was like 50, 60 people there, and mostly they talk about deals and this, that, and the other. I took them through a whole kind of vision building exercise, right?
Yeah.
And connected with everybody loved it, right? Because we too often do not do that. So there are some processes for it, and I created a little ebook that people can go through. They can get on my website and find that actually gives you some prompts, and you can do some journaling exercises
Mm,
around that, right? There's some
nice.
great books. Behind me, I have Vivid Vision by Harold, uh, Cameron Harold, so you can do that, right? So just spend time on that, because the funny thing is people will spend more time like planning their Saturday night out that they'll spend planning their vision,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, right? It's one of those things, and you're preaching to the choir here. You know what I mean? This is stuff I talk about here on all the time, because it's just. Like you said, it's almost uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Especially if you don't do it a lot. You know what I mean? It could become a great habit. But if you don't, and I've noticed too, with 10 years, I mean, it was 10 years ago that I was put onto that, journey there. There were times when I was really into that stuff, and the personal development side and just constantly absorbing content in that world. And then there were times when I wasn't. And then there's times when I'm back onto it, and I've always felt a lot better when I was than when I wasn't. But it's just crazy how easy it is to get away from it, and just days go by, weeks go by, a year goes by. It's just unbelievable. So it's finding that time, scheduling the time. It's just as important as anything else, and it makes a drastic difference, right? I mean, I would think in the real estate world, especially, like you said, people just kind of get so lost in the next deal, the deals that they're currently in, the stresses and the successes that come from all that, that taking the time to reflect just doesn't always, and really to have a clear vision and path to where you're going just doesn't always come up, right? And then when you do it, you feel uncomfortable. You almost feel like I need to be doing something. Um, but that is something, and
yeah.
actually extremely important, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I meet with my clients, and I also still work with my same coach, almost 5 years later, because I need those times, those resets, get re-excited about things and the dreams. But I always tell people when they're like, oh man, meeting with you, and I was like, hey, this is your time. You have an hour. This is your time to focus on yourself. Put the phone away,
Mm,
close your
yeah.
email and everything else, because how often do we give ourselves this gift of time to ourselves to really focus on the things that are important, right? It doesn't, if you can be the richest person in the world, but if your family life sucks, if your health sucks, if everything else sucks, what's the point, right? So
Yeah.
this is really that opportunity to recenter yourself and work on the things that are important to you.
Mm, I love it. How has it guided your investing? And when you look at deals or you look at operators, Is there anything specific you want to look for? You know what I mean? Like, I'm curious because this was a question I didn't ask earlier that I wanted to ask. And there's so many things that I wanted to ask. I forgot, and I want to come around to it and see if I could try to tie it to what we've been talking about. But like, because you're investing, buying deals directly, but you also are making passive investments as well. And also, I'm curious to how, if any of that, how it's kind of helped with your due diligence process and and kind of aligning, the deals and the operators with you personally and your goals and your vision. Like, how have you been able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, now obviously, 5 years ago when I looked at a deal and it's like, oh, those numbers look good, let me invest. Now I'm like, okay, now I can dig through all the assumptions and the market and the operator and so forth, right? So I I definitely pay attention to track record. I pay attention to the market, to the business plan in much more detail than I could have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? So definitely focus on that in much more detail. And I've also changed my personal approach, and you can probably appreciate this because I have so much equity in so many different deals. I don't want to go out and get into more equity deals. I'm much more interested in debt on my
Sure.
first
No,
side, just
absolutely, yeah.
because I was like, hey, yeah, equity is great, but equity is also the first thing that's going to get wiped out if a deal goes bad, right? So I do like debt. So I do, invest in debt and lend out my own money and stuff like that because I feel like I let somebody else go and do the hard work, and I'll let the money that I've made work for me, or put to work in their deals and so forth, right? So 'cause I feel like equity is it's a little tough right now. I mean, it's tough to make money, so that has changed personally for me. But it's definitely track record. It's what are they doing and getting to know. And this is the cool thing I think about real estate investing. I can get to know somebody like you, Peter, who is the person that's on the boots on the ground doing the work, right? If I invested in Apple or God knows Google, I don't know who the hell those people are, right? I can't call up and say, Peter, or whoever,
Yeah.
what the hell is going on here, right? With
Yeah.
you, I could get in front of you and say, okay, what's happening, and get to know you and get to trust you.
Yeah.
That helps a lot too, I think, in the private equity, the syndication space.
Yeah. Do you work with investors, or what does that look like?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've raised, millions of dollars in our different deals, right? So yeah, we definitely do raise money from private investors for our syndications and so forth. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Is that the question, or was that?
Yeah. No, I was curious. Yeah, because I know you do the coaching stuff and things like that. And I thought you had raised capital to bring investors into your deals, that kind of thing. So I wanted to make sure that was understood that you do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but the last multifamily deal we've done was the end of 2023, right? So all of 24, we did a couple of small light industrial, and I'm definitely just kind of just see what the market does. And again, because this is not to dissuade anybody. If you can go in there and you can find distressed deals, you can make a lot of money on there. We got to work through all these deals that we have done, right, and focus on that. So we're more in that operations asset management approach right now, or focus right now.
Yeah. Well, Jens, this has been a great conversation, a wonderful way to start the day. You know what I mean? Like, I love the dual approach, you know what I mean? And we have a lot in common when it comes to looking at the mindset part of it and kind of looking at your wealth holistically and all. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of great takeaways. For somebody that wants to learn more, you mentioned have a kind of a vision thing that they can go through on your site and all. How can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more from you?
Yeah, probably my website is the best. So it's Jens, Jens, Nielsen, Nielsen.us. So jensnielsen.us. That's kind of my coaching, consulting website. And I think a little pop-up will come up, put your email in, you'll get that workbook. And there's a link there too to my real estate website too. People can connect there. And I think I have a link for a free, kind of call if anybody want to jump on a call and talk about investing, coaching, mentoring, anything they're interested in. So that's probably my best advice right now. You can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Sounds good. Well, Jens, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me.
Absolutely, Peter. It was fun. Thank you.